Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of the Players NIL Industry Insider podcast. My special guest today, John Lyndon. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited about this because it's one of the sections that I preach to young people in my public speaking and my advising role, and that is the powerful use of LinkedIn. I've said it, I believe that it's maybe the most powerful business tool ever created. And I think we're still in the early stages of understanding it. And you are a seasoned veteran, an expert in LinkedIn. You're the chief executive officer of Lyndon Consulting Company, a company that's focused on empowering individuals and companies with the tools and the necessary equip them to use LinkedIn in a powerful way. So thank you for joining me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm glad we could connect on this.
Well, you spent 10 years at LinkedIn, and I think for many of us, we probably have seen technology companies come and go, the dot-com era, lived through all of that. I'm sure that through your 10 years at LinkedIn, you saw what launched and how it evolved. Take us through the journey of what the original premise of LinkedIn was, and if it's changed, how it's changed in your time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to kind of, see what LinkedIn was, its kind of origin story and what it's become today. There's been a lot of, I would say, iterations through the years of LinkedIn, and probably especially more now, since they were bought out by Microsoft. There's been a lot of kind of changes in the way that LinkedIn is used and kind of how the platform operates. But there's also two sides to LinkedIn. It's the member experience and what it is for users, and then how it's used commercially and the products that LinkedIn has built over the years in kind of talent and marketing and selling and learning. So those are kind of the four kind of commercial pillars of LinkedIn. But when it was originally, created back in 2004, 2003, 2004 by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder, it was more built as that kind of network building and place you go to kind of highlight your resume, your CV, and you kind of what you do in your job, and also how to get a new job, right? And that's really the kind of thought process of LinkedIn originally, and especially the way that people used it for many years. I'd say, at least a decade, if not longer. Its primary use was, I'm looking for a new job, or I'm looking for my first job. I should probably have a LinkedIn profile and apply for roles. Whereas now it's completely, expanded from that use and that use case in really being the place where the world of work spends its time online, right? And so as a professional in the workforce, how do we show up on a place like LinkedIn to use it in a way that can be beneficial or valuable? That may be getting that new job. It might be connecting with people in my industry. It might be, becoming a thought leader or a creator online and sharing content, whether that's articles or videos or any other type of content. And so we've really seen it evolve as a member and as a user, and then how it's evolved commercially and companies using the LinkedIn platform for, how they hire people and using the products around hiring that LinkedIn has, or from a marketing standpoint, right? And how companies advertise and market on the LinkedIn platform. And then there's a sales product called Sales Navigator. So how do people use LinkedIn from a selling aspect? And then the final area is learning. So LinkedIn bought a company, they acquired a company called lynda.com a number of years ago, and created a learning platform on LinkedIn so that people could learn new skills and take courses and do accreditations on the platform as well, which helped expand what it was and how it was used, and why people would spend time on the platform. So yeah, it's been very, interesting to see it from the inside and how it's, operated and being built, but then from the outside view as well, how it's evolved as a platform.
Yeah, fascinating story. The best laid plans of business plans sometimes, yet the best thing you can do is pivot, right? As the
Absolutely, yeah.
right, yeah, the
And
consumer,
you need to survive, right?
the consumer will tell you what they're interested in, right? No question about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You used the phrase human connection tool, and you touched on it briefly, but what does that
Mm.
mean, human connection tool?
Yeah, I mean, I have tried to use LinkedIn over the years as a human connection tool that creates pathway to opportunity, right? And so really changing the focus of how I use LinkedIn in kind of my daily use, how I show up on the platform, and really trying to understand who am I looking to work with, partner with, build with, create with, and when that is the outcome that you're looking to achieve, it then becomes about the people, right? And your network, and really using LinkedIn as that human connection tool of how does it get me closer to the right people rather than it being a social media platform or somewhere that we just post to try and get likes or comments or engagement on content, right? And so changing that focus to being human centered, right? And showing up as authentic and as kind of us as possible, right? In who we are, and it really helping us get to trust and credibility with people. Which I think if you create your profile with that in mind, if you grow your network with that in mind, and then you share content with that in mind, you're going to get a lot closer to the people that you want to build with or connect with or partner with.
Yeah, I often tell young people, brand isn't what you think of you; it's what other people think of you.
That's right. It's your reputation, right?
It's what they say about you when you're not in the room, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to do that, and we're going to dive into brand a little bit more as we go
Mhm.
along here. But my next question is, we're talking mostly to athletes in my neck of the woods, and we're
Yeah.
share some of your stories with athletes as well. But what are the misconceptions that athletes have? What are you hearing most, or what do you see and you just maybe you cringe and you say, "Oh no, that's wrong. You're thinking about this incorrectly." What are the
Yeah.
misconceptions?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question because, I work with athletes similar to you, most days of the week, as I, do a lot of work in kind of the sports industry. And the misconceptions are actually very similar to the misconceptions that other people have in all different industries about LinkedIn. And, some of those misconceptions are that it's really just a jobs platform still, right? And so people still view it in that way because they haven't necessarily seen the evolution or been told about how the platform has evolved. So they still view it as that's the place you go to when you're looking for a job. The other misconception is that it's only a platform for high level executives or people in the business world that work in finance or technology, and that it's not a platform for people in sport or athletes playing at any skill level in across all sports. And so those are some of the conversations that I like to have initially with athletes or anyone in sport, is that it is actually a platform for you, especially if you then use it in a way that builds human connection, right? And it not being just a replacement of social media from Instagram or TikTok or X. And so using it in that different way to get closer to those outcomes. So trying to kind of dispel some of those misconceptions about the use of the platform. And then the other side of it is how you kind of build your brand and what we even think of the word brand, right? You mentioned it. It's how people view you, right? What do people say about you when you're not in the room? What is your reputation? How do we actually build trust and credibility in who we are and what we do and what we're good at, right? And I think if you can kind of get rid of those misconceptions and then start to leverage LinkedIn for the purpose that it was built, right? And in kind of growing that network, building your brand, doing more of the things that you want to do and are good at. I think we're getting closer to purpose and some of that really good kind of things that can happen on LinkedIn that we don't realize before we start using it. So
We talked a little bit about, and then you mentioned being intentional. So in
mhm.
storytelling in particular, what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? What is the brand message that you're trying to share? What is the engagement that you're trying to get? Who is the audience? I assume that that all goes into the storytelling process. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, and I love the way that you talk about intentionality, because I think you have to be intentional about why you're on LinkedIn and what you're going to kind of get out of it. Where is that value, and what are some of those outcomes that you're pursuing, right? And being very intentional about the way that you show up on the platform, the way that you tell your story, the way that you talk about what you do and why you do it, right? There's an intentionality that you have to kind of apply to that. And then the second part of that, I believe, is the clarity piece. Being really clear on the why, right? And the clearer you are, I think, on some of those, storytelling aspects and the reasons why you do it and the outcomes that you're going after, the more powerful a platform like LinkedIn becomes. And so it all starts with intentionality and clarity for me. And then that leads into the purpose and the outcomes and the story, right? Should all follow that.
So we've talked about LinkedIn as a platform for connection, a human connection tool. We've talked about the brand process. What do people think of you? Being intentional with your content, the storytelling part of it. Um, but how do you build relevance? How do you build a professional identity? What are the things that you see people make a mistake with? And what should people take advantage of more when they got this concept, they understand this, but
Yeah.
why does relevance matter and how do you build credibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important topic, especially when we think about what is our relevance to our network or what we put out, right, to the world online. And so, when we think about building our profile on LinkedIn and kind of that's what people see first, right? I always talk about relevance in that area at the beginning because the way that you build your profile, the way that you talk about yourself, hopefully helps people get to trust and credibility really quickly. And part of that is what's the relevance to that other person, right? Why should they trust in who you are and what you do and why you're connecting or engaging with them? And so to try and be highly relevant and focused, targeted in that, in the way that you build your profile, and then how you grow your network intentionally, I think is often overlooked, right? In you're not trying to just have as many followers as possible as you might do on other social media platforms, but on LinkedIn, being really intentional about how you grow that network because you want to be highly relevant to them and what they kind of put out and create content around, you want to be also highly relevant, right? And in how you react to those things. So I think if there's this kind of this value share in relevance within a network, again, it becomes very powerful, and the opportunities then it creates become very, very kind of powerful as well. And you think about even how we connected and what we first spoke about. There was a relevance to it in what we both do and the conversations that we both have every week with athletes all over the world, and there was a high relevance play, right, in how we potentially overlap. And so, profile, network, and then the way that you communicate content should have, again, a high relevancy to what you're creating, what you're sharing, how you're communicating it, because that's where the connection happens, right? If we see things in our news feed on any social media platform, if there's no relevance in it or that's kind of built into it and it doesn't relate to us, we just keep on scrolling, right? And we don't engage with that person or that content. And so I think we have to be intentional about the way that we think about relevancy, about our profile, building our network, and then the way that we share content.
It's a great answer, and it sounds simple, but I know it's not, right? It takes a lot of
It
thought,
takes time and
takes
thought
time, takes
and
effort.
process.
You know,
Yeah,
there's a failure component to it. You know, you write something
absolutely.
that you think is relevant, and
Yeah.
everyone and you can't believe no one's read it. You're like, what are they missing, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
sometimes you write the silliest things, and it gets all kinds of traction. And you go, how'd that happen? You know, and
How'd that happen?
who knows how the algorithms work? But I think social marketers and I think brands now are starting to look at, they don't care about your followers anymore. They really want
Yeah,
engagement, right? And they want
yeah,
to know who your audience is. What is the relevance of that audience from a
yeah.
marketing, from a sales standpoint? And I think I had I had a football player reach out to me the other day. He said he has 130,000 followers on Instagram.
Hmm.
Pretty high number,
Yeah,
and no NIL deals. Can I help him?
right.
Right. So where's the intentionality? What's the method? And one of the things that comes from that is the next question I have is about social proof, right? Because I think there is a little bit of skepticism in the world today about, unfortunately, all of the spam that we get in our emails or
Yeah,
the faulty advertising we see on social or even on television or streaming services. And we're a little
mm,
skeptical, I think, sometimes. So we're
yeah,
looking for social proof, right? We're looking for something that you can relate to or someone that you trust that
yeah.
recommends you. How do you build social proof into all of what we've talked about right now?
Yeah, I think being as human as possible, right? It being authentic in what you're doing and how you're doing it, how you're building, yeah, and what you create. I think the more human we become in those interactions and that engagement, the more social proof and trust and credibility that comes along with it. So I talk about these three main pillars of profile, network, and content a lot, and how really you should be building trust and credibility within each of them, right? And so the way that I build my profile should be authentic. It should tell my story in my tone and in my voice, so that when I look to connect with you, Mark, you look at my profile and you say, oh, I kind of get an idea about who John is and what he does and why he does it and what he's good at. And that's kind of the first kind of pillar. And then you look at our kind of shared network and you say, well, me and John have multiple shared connections, right? And those people I already trust. So that builds in, a deeper layer of trust and credibility and that social proof. So you've gone from profile and trust and credibility to network, trust and credibility. And then the way that you kind of create and share content should follow those two, right? And it should be highly relevant to the first two of profile and network. And that again builds another layer of trust and credibility into your reputation and who you are. And when those three things kind of happen and have consistency, then that relevance and that social proof and that reputation and that trust and credibility all follow, right? And so brands, if you think about brands and companies that want to work with athletes, that want to sponsor or partner athletes, they're looking for all of those things rather than in the past, what we've seen is how many followers do you have, right? How many people care about you as an athlete? We're not seeing that as being as important anymore, right? Brands are
Yeah.
looking for trust and credibility because their reputation is now tied to it. And I think we don't talk about that enough. We don't highlight that enough. We've kind of been taught kind of the wrong way to kind of build social media, right? Because it's been all about how many people follow you or how many highlight reels you put up, or what's the life that you show on social media that isn't the real you and doesn't show the failures or the things that didn't work out or the struggles that you had to get to where you are. And I think the more that we story tell through those things and build trust and credibility through them, the more opportunities will come, the more deals that will be kind of created and opened up for athletes wherever they are in their career. And hopefully the earlier as possible that these conversations are starting to be had, right? Is that the focus isn't all on your career and your social following. It more becomes your journey, your story, who you are, and what your values are, right? And how you align with people, companies, brands, the sport, and so on. So that's kind of how I think about kind of the social proof or the reputation, your trust and credibility on a platform like LinkedIn.
Yeah. I tell young people, young athletes, that they have an advantage because most people have some idea who they are, right? There's already
Yeah.
some trust and credibility. You know, if you like LeBron James as a player, you're probably going to listen to him as a pitchman, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of natural, right? But
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
winding down here, but I want to get to some actionable insights, and so this is the sound nugget time. And you know, the first question I have, and maybe it should be the last question, but the first question I have is, what's too much content, and how does an athlete or how does a person posting on LinkedIn with intentionality, with all the storytelling, with the things that we're talking about, how do they know what's too much and what's not enough? What's the right sequence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if there's one answer to that because I feel like if you asked 100 different people, especially in marketing or that have worked for a social media company, they'll tell you 100 different answers. And a lot of those answers would probably be post as much as you can, 3 times a day, 5 times a week, and even more than that in some cases, where I think about the way that someone posts content, shares, communicates on a platform like LinkedIn, and you almost have to do a gut check around it.
Mm,
Of how do you feel about that content if you were to see it, right? And again, that then speaks into intentionality. It speaks into the relevancy of am I just creating content to create content, or am I looking to create content that's going to have an impact, that's going to
right.
have value, that's going to share something that helps someone or upskills, an individual or gets me closer to those outcomes that I'm looking to create. I think we have to be intentional and we have to be very clear on the why when we're posting content, whether that's a post, an article, a video. And so the question doesn't become how much is too much. It becomes what is the quality and outcomes that come from the content that you create and share.
Good answer. All right, it's time to look into the crystal ball. LinkedIn has evolved, it's changed, it's probably changing as we're speaking today. There's some new algorithm or program being written
Yeah.
or implied. What does the future look like? How can athletes take advantage of it? And the second part of that question is, how does artificial intelligence come into play going forward?
Oof, that's a big question to answer. The first part is we are, I think, at the very beginning still of the sports industry showing up on LinkedIn in the right way, and athletes at whatever stage of your career being active on LinkedIn um, and engaging on the platform, leveraging it to get closer to what you want to do. And those outcomes can be very different. I speak to athletes who are entrepreneurs or they're investors or they're advisors or, they're looking for a dual career, let's say. And so whatever those outcomes are that you're trying to get closer to, and it might be a partnership deal, a sponsorship deal with companies that you align with and have the same values with. How can you do more of that on the LinkedIn platform? And we're not seeing that many athletes yet kind of taking advantage of it. I think we will. I think the future looks very bright for athletes in the sports industry leveraging LinkedIn in a better way. And you do see some of the elite athletes leveraging LinkedIn and it being very powerful. You think about Steph Curry. He has a newsletter on LinkedIn and he's got an investment fund that he talks a lot about. And so he's using it in a way that's completely outside or beyond sport because he knows that he can focus his sporting kind of life and career and brand on other social media platforms. And so how does he leverage LinkedIn in a different way? You see other, athletes that are at the top of their game doing the same thing across different sports. And so that's exciting, I think, of where we're headed. I think the future hopefully will have athletes very early on in their sporting career. If you think about student athletes, players that are in academies, being on LinkedIn and kind of sharing their stories, building their brand, growing their networks intentionally. I think that is a future that we will get closer to. And that's exciting to me because I think, again, if it's built around people and human connection, amazing things will happen. How AI will play into that, we're already starting to see some of that on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is very AI focused in the way that they iterate the platform, how they build AI tools into their commercial products. A lot of it is AI driven now. LinkedIn's algorithm for many years has leveraged AI in kind of what it shows you and what it thinks is relevant and the people that it looks to connect you with. Being kind of there's AI built into the backbone of it. And so I think we'll see those things increase. But I also think on the other side, there's a balance to it, hopefully, where it doesn't become dominated by AI. And so you lose the human element of it, right? And so I think we're kind of in that place at the moment where it's a bit noisy, it's a bit messy. It's not a finished product with AI and LinkedIn. And so that will evolve and it will change and we'll notice some of those changes. We won't notice some of them, especially with the algorithm and how that is used. And so it's going to be an interesting space to watch. And we have to think about who's behind LinkedIn, which is Microsoft. Microsoft acquired LinkedIn in 2017 for 26 billion. And so a lot of how Microsoft products are continuing to evolve and add AI into the way that it's built. The same will happen with LinkedIn. And so that's something to just think about in the way that the product will continue to evolve and change and who the product will become valuable for. I think in the past, it hasn't been very valuable for athletes or student athletes, players in the like with NIL. And so I think that's changing and it's going to become even more powerful and valuable for the sports industry.
Well, it's music to my ears because I believe that too. And we start trying to build brands at age 16, which in the United States is the junior year in high school. It's when the college decision process begins. It's when recruiting begins. And as you mentioned, it takes time. And I don't care what social media platform or whether it's a professional platform like LinkedIn or others, you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden you have brand, right? And awareness. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And thank you for that confirmation that I think the future is bright for athletes using platforms like LinkedIn. And maybe there will be others that come along, but LinkedIn certainly dominates this business to business mindset. And I think it adds a bit of credibility. If you're on LinkedIn, it's different than a social platform like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. It's just different, right? John, this has been great. This is awesome.
Thank you.
This is a chance for you to promote yourself, your business. Obviously, you're on LinkedIn if people want to find you, but tell us a little bit more about your consulting work, where they can find you, website, social media, whatever. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. I think it's a highly relevant but important topic, right? Again, wherever you are in that sports journey, whether you're a student athlete, a current professional athlete, a retired or former athlete, I think there's a lot of value that can come from the LinkedIn platform in how we show up and how we use it, and what we focus on. And so people can find me on LinkedIn, John Lyndon, and then my website is lyndonconsulting.com. So that kind of shares a bit more about my story, and what I do, and what I focus on, and kind of what I do from a kind of a commercial model. And then I recently released an ebook for professional athletes, which is called the Professional Athlete's Guide to Building Your Brand on LinkedIn, which talks a lot about kind of the topics that we've discussed today around why are professional athletes joining LinkedIn more now than ever before, being outcome focused, and outcomes first, in what you do, and then kind of profile network content. And so that is available on the website to buy and download. But that's really the resource that I've kind of tried to get at scale into athletes' hands, because I think there's a lot of value from not only my experience at LinkedIn, but the conversations that I've had with athletes all over the world in all different sports, all different skill levels, and what are the trends and things that people think about or have anxieties around, and kind of how to build on LinkedIn. So that's available to download either as kind of for your ebook or reader, or for like a PDF, depending on what platform people are using.
Great. Well, I'd be excited to read it and to follow along. And I certainly wish you success with your business.
Thank you.
Obviously,
Appreciate it.
I'm about helping young athletes in particular.
Yeah.
Education is so important. There's so much misinformation out there. I think what you're doing is really important because, again, we take it from a 4-year mindset to a 40-year mindset. And I think
That's
LinkedIn
right.
plays into that long-term vision. So I wish you nothing but success, and I thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Love it. Thanks so much.